All right, welcome to the show. This is Bold Strong, and we're very excited today to have Fabian Warner with us today. Fabian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so Fabian's all about a lot of things, and we're going to be talking today a little bit about an organization that you've designed and built up called MenzLeague, and some of your other passions as well. So MenzLeague is all about men's health. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Just kind of give us a little background, a little about who you are, what you're doing. What's cool in the world today?
I appreciate it. Yeah, my name's Fabian Warner. Obviously, me and my friend and I, Derek Hill, we created an organization called MenzLeague. It's really centered around men becoming better, whether that's 1% today, 1% in a month, 1% in a year. We just want to start moving in that direction. We're pretty excited about it. It's going to be coming up on 2 years, New Year's Eve here, and it's grown quite a bit in this last year. So. Yeah, just excited about it, really.
Yeah, and a number of different resources you have. You're doing a podcast program. You have some other resources for people as well. So what's the terms around that? Yeah.
Yeah, so really, MenzLeague's really, as a whole, as a movement, as a community, is broken into 4 major parts. We have our membership, we have community, we have coaching, and we have resources. And the reason it kind of went that way is originally MenzLeague was supposed to just be an event. That's what the original concept was, and then obviously COVID happened right after. It was literally days after we opened up MenzLeague to start. Obviously, the event couldn't happen, so then that's when we pivoted and kind of created the membership, and the membership's kind of built into having its own private community. We wanted a space where men could feel like they could open up and be vulnerable and not have to worry about the pressures of trying to impress a girl or anything like that. It's just men. So it has private only spaces. It's got resources in there, such as we have these virtual mental health check-ins that we've partnered up with the MedCore company, and the whole purpose of that is we wanted guys to be able to. A lot of the issues I think men are facing stems around them not being able to share. Whether that's something you've been sitting on for years, something that just happened. A lot of the time we deem that we need to be tough and, it's not really that big of a deal or it's not a problem. So we ended up internalizing all that. And there's just a lot of statistics that men are struggling with. So the virtual mental health check-ins is just another avenue for men to be able to talk. So is the private only spaces. We have these courses that we've worked with professionals on that you'll get in the membership as well. And each of those courses are kind of centered around these 3 major pillars: physical, relationships, and financial. So when we were trying to figure out ways to help men become better 1% each day, we tried to figure out, well, what tangibly can we do? And we look back on our lives being 2 mid-30-year-olds and think, well, you know what? We struggle with a lot of financial stuff. Like, we heard the concepts, we understood them kind of, but we never really did anything with them. And a lot of other probably men are doing the same stuff. So there's an avenue there to become better financially. Physically, we were both athletes, but both bodies deteriorated, didn't make the right decisions all the time. And here you are, mid-30s, and it's not like when you're 18, 21. And really a lot of MenzLeague is about taking those learnings and trying to apply it to guys before they have to go through the same stuff that we went through. So, and in relationships, the same thing. Like, you talk, what's a relationship thing? Most people go to, well, me and my girlfriend, me and my boyfriend, me and whoever. But what about the relationship with yourself? What's about your relationship with beyond people? So there's all these relationships that I don't know necessarily that we're taught to nurture, taught to work with and build on. So anyways, yeah. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but there's just so many things within MenzLeague that I could talk about for days.
So one day you were watching a romantic movie and this all like, I got to do this. No, what was the genesis of it? Like, where'd it come from?
Well, full disclosure, I'm generally in my thoughts type of guy, constantly. And 2019, I spent a big chunk of time in my thoughts, and it really started with the passing of 3 men that were pivotal in my life at different stages. A good friend from high school, one of my cousins, older guys, one of their best friends who kind of became an older brother figure to me, and my uncle. So those 3 people spaced out throughout 2019 dying, and going to those funerals, watching the impact, hearing the people talk about them, seeing all the things they did. all three of them were doing what they should be doing,
Right.
passionate about what they were doing, and they were affecting change at a larger scale. So I think I was constantly, questioning my relationship with them. Did I put in what I could have put in while they were still there? Did I take it for granted? And then from that, what am I doing with my relationships that are here right now?
Right.
For the people that are alive right now, am I cultivating that relationship with my dad? Am I checking in on some of my good friends that if they were to pass away, I would question why I didn't do it. So I think that was the beginning. And then same time going through that, I was dealing with kind of a breakup of a marriage, going through a divorce. Same thing. It got to the point where we were both amicably, let's separate, but still questioning, like, how did this get here? Like, how do you get on a knee, ask someone to marry you, and then like within a year and a half later, you're breaking up. It's crazy. And you tell your parents, you get them there, you say your vows. And so just a lot of reflection for me personally that year. And I think it all reached its boiling point near the end of the year. And that's when I started to experience what I thought was heart attacks, but it was panic attacks. So I wasn't even getting full breaths in, and it felt like I caught air and my lungs wouldn't fill up properly.
Yeah.
And it literally felt like a sharp pain through my chest, and it brought me to my knees, like to the point where I'm like reaching and grabbing and looking for it. It was yeah. And to the point I talked about earlier is it's not a big deal. I mean, people are going through worse. No need to talk, but I didn't bring it up or talk to the doctor about it till it happened to me like 8 times. And I think that was the kind of the origin of MenzLeague, and the actual tipping point would have been on New Year's, 2019 New Year's, so heading into 2020. And I went to a dinner at my partner's house, Derek, and there was 2 other guys there, and we just started talking. And I had brought up, I'd gone for lunch with a guy during my day job, and he goes to a lot of retreats, like silent retreats and all this. And he would always tell me like how emotionally moving it was. And he used to talk to me about how men specifically have a problem opening up and sharing.
Right.
So I brought that concept up at New Year's, and the guys just kind of started latching onto it. And specifically Derek, my partner, was really latched onto it. Ended up staying up till 5 a.m, and I was like, I'm making a company called MenzLeague. Wow. And New Year's, you're hitting your chest and you've had one too many, and I'm making a business, and it's like, I don't know if we're actually going to. And then I guess the tipping, so we said we were going to do it, but again, I don't know if it was 100% going to happen. And that one of the guys who passed away from cancer, and no one knew, and none of his best friends knew, and he was gone. And to see the older guys react the way they did, like some of them were like broke down and were just so angry that he didn't share that with them, so they could have been there for him. But needless to say, his wife had a birthday party for him early in the year. Like it was his year he's been gone, and had all the guys over, and she stood up on a chair and she's giving this speech, and she was just like, the last thing that he said to me before he passed was, "This is gonna be my greatest comeback ever." So he literally thought he was going to come back and beat it. And she looked at all of us and she's like, if you're sitting on something to say to somebody, say it. If you were sitting on an idea of something you want to do it. And I'm like, I'm sitting there with like 12 other guys, and I'm trying not to like, man, I feel like she's talking directly to me as I'm sitting on this idea. Right. So I tell her about the idea later, and she's like, you need to do this. Yeah. And that's when I said, okay, we're going to do an event. Right. And then 4 weeks later, COVID, boom. So, yeah, that's the origin.
Are you still going to do an event? Is there still an event down the pipe?
We're looking to do it this year. Normally we break our events into, a few things, but the major difference in our categories is a social series and a speaker series. Okay. So speaker series is kind of the original concept of MenzLeague, is we're going to get a speaker to come in, whether it's a firefighter to come in and talk about PS, like whatever it is. It's going to be some sort of a speaker to come in and get guys thinking, okay, sharing and being vulnerable is not a loser thing to do. There's big macho guys that do it too. So we're going to bring in a speaker, have some good food, bring in a DJ, maybe rent out like a downtown hotel, downtown Calgary, make it into a nice event. Because what we really want to do is celebrate and make the vulnerable guy look cool. That's the first avenue to this, is that our whole lives we've been taught that it's the macho guy that doesn't share and doesn't cry, that's the hero, that's the guy that's cool.
Yeah.
And I think we need to flip that on its head. So that was the concept of the speaker series. Social series is supposed to be a smaller venue. It can be a pickup hockey game, basketball game. It could be a little pub. We can have an open mic. It's supposed to be so this event that we're going to do this year, we're going to kind of mix mash two. We'll bring in a speaker, but it'll be a smaller type thing. We just wanted to get one done. So it's just going to be a men's league event is probably what we'll call it. But
yeah,
we're definitely looking to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds pretty great. And you came up through what's your background? What's
well, my background, athlete my whole life. Didn't really I got into the oil and gas sector when I was 26. I kind of jumped in there at the lowest level. I was delivering mail. And it was a great job, I was over at Canada before they changed the name to Ovintiv or whatever it is now. And I delivered checks to all of the administrators and the landmen for all of the stuff they were giving out. So I got to meet so many different people in the company, which was awesome. And I'd spend, start spending a little bit too much time socializing with everyone as I was delivering the checks. But I knew that I liked the downtown vibe, but I didn't necessarily, admin work wasn't really my cup of tea. I love talking, interacting. So they saw that, and I started trying to work towards becoming a surface landman.
Okay.
And I got the intern license. I was now set up to go do some serious, like real deals with a senior land agent. And during that time, I worked on a floor with accounting, community relations, Indigenous engagement, and I got to meet all those guys. And I'd always volunteer to help out community and Indigenous engagement. And I was lucky. One day I just helped out an Indigenous engagement meeting and brought up some guys, talked to them about sports, and brought them up to the big boardroom. And to thank me, one of the lead guys there, it's like, can I take you for lunch? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I love questions, so I go for lunch with the guy. I'm like, well, what do you do? What's your? And he's like, I go to cultural sweats, I go to powwows, I work with the communities to make sure we're maximizing this. And I'm like, wow, like
that's kind of neat.
I was interested, right? And he was like, well, next time I'm going out, maybe I'll bring you. And I was like, okay, not thinking much of it. And 2 months later, he's like, hey, I'm going out to a sweat. You want to come? Sure. Head out there, and I'm in my dress clothes. He's in jeans and like shades.
Oh yeah.
We get out there. I'm asking questions the whole way up. We're talking about communities and different tribes and things that have happened, the treaties and all this stuff. And him and his boss are giving me all this information.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, maybe if we get out there, you'll be lucky. We'll get to build this thing. And I'm like, I am not a builder. I'm not the greatest at tools and all that stuff. So I was like, oh yeah, hooray. And then we get out there. Again, I'm the only one in dress clothes because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Yeah. And we built this sweat lodge with a medicine man over at Six Sika, and it was absolutely awesome. And we went in there, we did a cultural sweat. It was such a cool experience. It was hot. They're closing up this. You're in this like little hut.
How big is it?
Oh, it's barely bigger than this desk, and it's low, and I'm 6'6", so I'm crouched in this I'm eating. I'm like, awesome. There's sweetgrass, people are smoking some sweetgrass. There's like berries in a cup, and we're doing all this. It's cool. It's very, very next level. And I'm like, this is work. Like, you guys, this is your job to come out here and do this. Yeah. And I just had such a great time. And on the way home, he's like, you know what? This girl's going on mat leave. The guys out here seem to like you. You seem very interested. I think you should apply. And long story short, I'm not going to go to the whole story, but pretty much I didn't get the job. And then they kept me around. Yep. And then, I eventually gave this one speech at this Métis mixer that in Canada was sponsoring. And then after that, the boss at the time was like, you know what, man, you want to be a landman? We'll get you in a landman. You want to be Indigenous engagement? I think we can get. And then 2 weeks later. Wow. So that's my background. I've been doing Indigenous engagement. I've moved to a pipeline construction company since then and still been doing it. Love it. Yeah.
That's cool. What about sports? What have you been doing? You call yourself an athlete?
Yeah, ex-athlete. Let's be clear.
Well, we're all just, it's like being an actor. Yeah. Like we're all actors. We're just waiting for the next gig. Yeah. Yeah,
for sure. I don't know if a gig's coming for me in sports, but I played sports my whole life, loved it. I identified as an athlete probably most of my life, all the way up until 28. But I barely count that 28-year-old season that I came back and played. 26 would have been the pinnacle of my career. You know, that was when I got my All-Star award in ACAC in the college ranks. That's when I probably felt my most comfortable. But yeah, whole life you spend, you know, I grew up playing soccer, a little bit of hockey, basketball, baseball, football in high school, played them all, loved them all. I love competing even to this day. Like fantasy sports has just taken over that niche of competition for me. I need to be competing. And yeah, I mean, sports specifically, obviously I was lucky enough to be able to coach as well. And I think that was a cool little, you know, to play your whole life and then coach for a large segment of your life. You get to see both dynamics and try and take what you got from coaches as you were growing up and try and emulate that to the kids.
Right.
So, yeah.
And you were coaching at Genesis?
Yes, Genesis basketball. So one of my really good friends, he owns Genesis basketball. He created it. And at the time when he created it, I guess myself and my friend Jamie, we were two of his rookies. We played together in college, and you know, he just asked us to help out with one team, and that's kind of where it started. He had a team, him and I did a team, and we had two teams. Now it's like ballooned into like 9 or 8 teams on both sides, women and men, and so it's I'm really proud of what he's accomplished for sure.
Did Genesis create? Do they have a facility?
Yes, they have. We kind of two. We share space in the Vision Center,
right?
And then they have the lab, which is more of like a practice kind of shooting facility type of thing. Yeah, and
where's
then
the lab at?
It's off of McLeod Trail, 45th, I think.
Oh,
or 30, cool. Something like that. Yeah, I think on the way to Chinook.
Right, and they do. That's where they do shooting training, technique training.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow, very neat. Well, let's go back to sports after in a minute, but there's a whole bunch of stuff about men's health that obviously it's kind of a big deal right now. It's a new world for men, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a crazy new world for everybody.
Yeah.
So what's you know, the big issues that men are, you know, going to struggle with? You know, we have, you know, there's kind of finding your place in the world right now, which is kind of tricky. You know, dating, you know, in the world is complicated now. Amazingly.
Yeah.
You know, just like everything you focus on. But what's interesting, what's, you know, a fun thing to talk about with men and
I mean, I think there's a lot. I think, and I think I touched on it earlier, I think the most important thing with men is, and I just don't think we do a good job of sharing the burden, if that is. So, and a lot of that has to do with us thinking that, one, it's not cool to do.
Yeah.
And 2, we're weak if we do. And I think men's ego and men has always been, you don't want to be weak, you don't want to be soft. And we're told that our whole lives, whether that's a coach, our parents, you know, don't cry, you know, don't be a baby, don't be soft, man up. You know, these are things you're taught your whole, that's what you see on television. That is it. We've all been there, locker room talk, we've been there in the groups of guys. So
is it a, you know, does it come a little bit from isolation? Does it come, like, you know, we have Instagram and Facebook and everything, we could have 1 million friends, but like, that's not helping. So what is, like, you know, like, short of going to, you know, joining clubs or joining things, like, what is the thing that brings us together, get together better? Like, is it that we don't have good enough friends, that when we do have friends, we don't open up, or like, where's the blockage in the machine?
Well, you know, there's so many answers to that question, I think. Obviously, I think there's a lot of different dynamics that exist when you're talking about men. Like, first of all, there's so many pieces. So if you're looking at it from like men, women, technically speaking, we're living in a patriarchal society. So I think the guys up top that are making these decisions, they think that the not soft man is the right way to do it. Meaning it's more a new school thought, and you're not just seeing it with men, you're seeing it with race, you're seeing all these things. Back in the day, it was a certain type of way, and it takes a lot for people up in this position to start thinking differently, especially when you're kind of the person that's been in control. So it's like, why would I want it to change? So I think that's number one. Number 2 is any kind of significant change takes so long. Like, I was having a great conversation with my girlfriend, and she had said to me, like, because I get a little antsy about, I really want to affect change. And she had said something to me. She's like, the change that you're affecting might take years before you really see a difference. And she made it was a big light bulb switch for me, because I had to change the way I was thinking about MenzLeague. Because she's right, like, this is going to take a long time.
Right.
Celebrating the guy who's vulnerable is going to take a long time. We do an initiative called Man Talk Mondays. And when I came up with the concept with Derek of MenzLeague, we wanted Man Talk Monday to be an avenue for men to be able to share. And it's been one of the most impactful and probably my most celebrated thing that I've enjoyed the most, because guys have thanked us for giving them the space to do it. But ask me how many of the close group of friends, my family, my close group of friends, ask me how many of those guys who pounded the table for MenzLeague, who said this is a great idea and it's needed, how many of them have given me a Man Talk Monday?
It's either a lot or a Zippo.
Yeah, and that's the point, is they believe in it, they understand it, but they don't want to put their face out there yet.
Right.
Like, they're not ready to do that. And a lot of that comes down with guys thinking, well, I don't have something serious enough to share. Or, my issue isn't as big as the other guys that I saw. Like, I don't have a domestic violence one. I don't have a racial situation to talk about. Like, I don't have this huge. And I think that's the problem, is that the Man Talk Money isn't about give us the biggest, deepest, darkest. Just share something that's on your mind. Yeah. You'd be amazed at how many other guys aren't sharing that same little issue that's not even, you don't think is a real issue. It just kind of bugs you.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed to see how many other guys are like, holy crap, like, I've gone through that too. Or and it's just normalizing having those conversations. Another one of my good buddies who believed in it, I remember one of our first or second posts that we put on our Instagram. He literally went into the post thing and made a joke about us trying to, and I literally had to call him after, and I said, bud, you know what I'm trying to do here, right? Yeah. You making fun of people that are doing this is not helping what we're trying to accomplish. Like, you're literally the problem. Like, that's the problem, is guys razz and they make fun of the guy who opens up and is vulnerable.
Right. Huh. So does, you have a new girlfriend or a girlfriend, maybe not new.
It's been seven. We're going on 7 months now, so new-ish, yes.
Does having a woman in your life, being, a supportive woman, let's assume, does that help? Does that help men be more vulnerable, possibly?
I think that's a question that's so hard to put in a box, because it would depend on the woman and depend on the man and dependent on the relationship. I can say fully that my girlfriend for sure is a positive in this avenue. When I met her, she actually reminded me of MenzLeague. She's constantly trying to be better. She's constantly wanting to evolve. She's constantly wanting to communicate. And she's been very, very supportive of this whole organization movement since the very beginning. Wow. So I definitely think it can definitely be a positive, and it could be a negative. In my case, I've been lucky enough that it's been a huge, huge, huge positive. So
yeah, is it hard for people dating now? What's the dating deal like? I don't have to date right now. So
well, I mean, lucky for me, I'm out of it now. But I mean, I was in it, and my partner and I, Derek, we talk about this all the time. I think dating, it comes back to that first relationship thing I said to you at the beginning. It's everyone thinks it's your relationship with others, but the most important relationship in dating is your relationship with yourself. I spent so many parts of my life, having a lot of people I got to have deep conversations with about their dating lives.
Right.
And my advice to guys back in the day was always like, you know what? Don't be the nice guy off the top. That doesn't mean be an asshole, but don't be overly nice. Right. Because I've seen it too many times in a row where you like a girl and you're like giving her everything, and she's usually just like, okay, like, you're the nice guy, like, and I've seen so many times my good girlfriends choose kind of the guy that was being more of the
genuine, maybe.
No, opposite. No? They were choosing the guy that wasn't necessarily giving them all the attention, or they were chasing the guy that was like a little bit mysterious, or they didn't know if he liked her. And meanwhile, there's a guy right beside them that's like on a knee with chocolates and flowers, and being like, "Hey, I'd love to date you," and they're like, "I just." So I spent most of my time telling guys, control that want, be nice, but make sure that you're coming to her as an equal, not as a, hey, I'm completely head over heels for you. But then as I grew older, I think it's a combination of that, but also being who you are. So if who you are is being that super nice guy, then just be that nice guy.
Right.
My entire dynamics change. It's like you just need to throw who you are and put the cards on the table and say, this is who I'm at. If you're not interested in that, that's totally fine. And I think a lot of people in the dating world have a problem with that part because you're like, well, I need to do this so the person likes me. It's like, no, because in 2 months, in a year and a half, when your normal self comes out, that's going to be a huge change. And that's either going to, person either going to be like, what is this? This is not what I signed up for. So you're wasting time.
I do see a lot of guys they're trying to fill a gap that they have or some shortcoming that they have. And maybe they're lonely, and then they're desperately trying to be in a relationship. And sometimes they need to slow it down, be who they are. Don't mess it up so early on in the game. Yeah,
I think slowing it down is just, it's so easy to react to emotion right off the hop, get excited, and make decisions just based off excitement. I think that was probably the biggest thing I learned through my marriage and my divorce is there's a lot of great things and there's a lot of emotional things, but you really need to slow it down and have a mature conversation. It depends. If you're looking for a partner or a wife or a husband or whatever, you need to slow it down, figure out what's important to you, like really what is going to irk you, what makes you tick, what do you need from your partner, and see if that person has that. And if they don't, is it something they're willing to work on? And you have to do it vice versa. You have to be able to do that for them. So
I think it's been interesting as I've gotten old, and maybe you'll get there one point. But like, what's interesting is that now that, I'm not in the dating mode at all. And so when I meet people, there's no agenda, I could date this person. Like, that part of the agenda is completely gone. And so now I can just have an interesting interaction with someone without having to assess them as like, they're kind of nice, maybe I want to have it, that's gone. Like it's pretty nice actually, because then I can just have just a legitimate one-on-one conversation with anyone now. And I'm not assessing them as a potential date in the future. It's kind of a neat spot to be in.
Yeah. I also think like dating to me all comes down to being able to pull yourself out of it, remind yourself about why you're in it, and work constantly to either make it better or you're never going down. You know what I mean? And I think it took me a long time. I would say not until like this relationship have I actually, or like in my mind intentionally am doing things to make sure I'm trying to make the relationship grow or move forward. Before I'd always just organically go where it went. Yeah. And this time I'm like, let's have a monthly check-in. Let's see, am I showing up for you? Are you showing up for me? Those are the kind of things that I'm introducing because I don't want to get complacent in why we were together, if that makes sense. But it took a while to learn that for me.
Do you ever get nervous when you hear about these young kids? They're so young and they're getting married.
Yeah, I think all of life is based off environment and perspective, though, and purpose and passion. But like perspective is such a huge thing, and when you're that young and you meet that person, and it's so explosive because it's the first time you felt like that, it's very hard to pull yourself out and be like, because just think about how much you learned from like 20 to 30, 30 to 40. Like every 10 years as a person, if you're not in constant communication, like take a sibling, for instance. You grow up with a sibling your whole life, same house, same rules, same religion. You both move out. And as you move 10 years past while you're not living together, they could be a different person.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Your sibling's not exactly as you remember them. Like if you're not talking to that person continuously, you're going to be surprised at some stage. And they might say like, hey, this. And you're like, what? How did that happen? So when you're 20, 18, 19, I'm not saying it's the wrong move. Because if you're committed to making it work and putting the effort in and you make that connection at that point, good for you. Yeah. I mean, for me, looking back on what I've learned from 20 to 35, I'm glad that I probably didn't select or know who my partner was until now, just because I'm just such a different guy.
Right.
And what's important to me now is completely different than what was important to me when I was 25, 26, 28.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the whole online thing has really evolved too, where it's like, man, I have a few friends that are in the dating mode
Yeah.
I'm so glad not to be anywhere close to it, because it seems like a feeding frenzy. Everyone's just like, and then do you, you start seeing someone that you see online, do you turn off your profile while you're seeing them, or do you leave it on? It's like,
we just had
it's so complicated.
We dove into that on our latest
Yeah.
podcast. We were talking about dating and what, like, to me, if you find someone that moves your dial where you're excited to talk to them, you should turn off the profile.
Yeah.
If you're just throwing out feelers and you're not sure yet and whatever, then keep your profile up. Keep going dates. But I think the most important thing that people need to remember is respect. So just be honest.
Right.
You know, if you're talking to like 4 people and, you know, they ask you if you're talking, yeah, listen, I'm talking to a bunch of people. I'm just trying to figure out what I actually want. And if they don't like that, then they're probably at a different spot than you are.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not going to work anyways.
I think a lot of people rush in, which makes it harder too. It's like, hey, we dated once. Now we should be doing all this other stuff. And then it just gets so complicated.
Well, that's why I think I said, when you said, as soon as I hear the word dating, what comes to my mind is the relationship with yourself.
Right.
If you're in a rush and all this stuff, you're probably not ready.
Yeah.
You should be so confident being alone before you try to engage in a relationship. And I'm guilty of it too. Like right after the divorce,
Yeah.
I was trying to force
Right.
a circle into a square.
Yeah.
I thought I was ready. I knew all the logic made I was ready, but I wasn't actually ready. I was going on these dates, but I wasn't mentally there. I was still so into what had just happened.
Right.
And comparing and thinking, blah, blah, and it wasn't about the person or me. It was about like me comparing my past relationship onto this person. And it's not the right way to do it, in my opinion. Like you should be, I remember distinctly being in my condo alone on New Year's and being like my parents invited me over, but I just spent Christmas with them. Like all my guys and we're out with their girlfriend, or everyone's doing something with their families. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, like, how did this happen to me? Like, I thought I would have been one of the guys to have, you know, some of my buddies who were like, you know, I'm not gonna say they weren't the best guys back in the day, but they have families now, they're moving forward, and I'm sitting there alone in a condo downtown Calgary thinking, what the hell happened here?
I need a selfie of this one.
Yeah, exactly. But I also remember being like, you know what, man? I'm happy. I'm within a walk's away from work. I'm getting myself healthy. I've started this new organization. You know, I have got a good paying job. I've got a great group of friends. I've got an awesome family. I'm like, the rest will eventually just take care of itself. So, and it wasn't until like 10 days later that I met this girl. Yeah. Right when you're not looking.
Right.
And you're done. I literally shut down the dating apps. Meeting her was like a Hail Mary on the last dating app as I was erasing them all. Wow. So whenever you're not looking, that's when it usually happens, I guess.
Yeah. That's pretty great. Yeah. And then too, it's like, you know, like, it's nice just to know people and talk to people, and you're not always dating. You know, it's like, I know people, I'm friends with them. That's great. It's a good spot to be in, actually. And then it takes a lot of pressure off of relationships. So that can be a lot of fun. So yeah, I have kids in dating mode right now, and it's like,
a great question to ask them would be, what exactly is important for your partner or your girlfriend or your boyfriend to have for you? Not a lot of people can actually fully like go deep and answer that like with some depth to it. Yeah. So I think we need to ask ourselves really hard questions all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think it's, you know what's an interesting, do you have kids?
No.
Oh, well, you're going to learn one day.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is the, you know, and I'm not a scientist. I'm not, you know, there's no real, you know, nothing behind this, but it's purely anecdotal, and having worked, I've been in scouts forever and, you know, had kids and stuff. So what's interesting is the, you know, at a young age when they're in the, you know, like let's say 15 to maybe it's 25, but maybe it's like 55, I don't know. But the amount of effect that hormones have on the drive, you know, and the differences, and I don't want to say that, you know, boys are specifically different than girls. But there's different hormones, and so there's going to be something going on that's different. But it's interesting, the drive that those hormones kind of, and the decisions that they're helping you make at that age. It's really fascinating. And I talk to my kids sometimes too, and it's like, you know, the reality is some of what you're experiencing is being driven by hormones. And you need to be able to, as a human, step above that experience and say, look down on it and say, like you said, what is important here? And and the hormones, our hormones are trying to make us have sex and have babies. That's kind of what they do.
Yep.
And when you start to realize that the hormones are telling you that, and it's like, you can kind of draw it into sports too. Like your body is telling you to stop a lot of the time, right? So it's those are sometimes hormones or other signals that come from, receiving inputs. So it's an interesting one.
But what's crazy about what you just said, and again, I'll give credit to the girlfriend because it was during a deep conversation that this came up, and she is actually the one that said it. When you're 18 and 16, you want to drive. So you have to go to driver's school. They make you take the test, they make you sit with someone, and eventually you pass your drivers, and then you're allowed to drive alone. What is our test for sex? No, I'm serious. Like, all of us are going to face these hormones and this drive. And again, as human beings, what are we doing as an entire species? What are we doing to set people up to make the right decision there? How much, we go to a sex ed class, once, twice in between, when you're in grade 10 or something like that, your parents try to talk to you about it, but your parents are in a tough spot. They've been telling you what to do your whole life. You're in that little bit of a rebel stage. So what are we doing as a society to set these guys up, these women up, to make the right decision in that moment? And I would argue not much.
Not much.
And it's such a huge decision. You could have a baby. Having a baby is one of the biggest life-changing decisions you can make in your life. And yet we don't have to do it. We don't make
There's no
our adolescence
process.
Exactly. There's nothing. Think about that. It's crazy.
There was a comedian years ago that kind of joked about it on stage. I forget who it was, but he was joking about how he was, comparing dating with a job application and getting a job. It was like, you don't even need any credentials, and you get this job, and then suddenly you've got a baby that you're completely unqualified, never had any education of how to raise. And basically society says, that's too bad. You got to figure it out now. It is really quite fascinating that we do that. And I don't know. But then, maybe the pendulum swings too far in some societies where we say, well, the best solution is I'm going to pick your spouse for you, and it's going to happen on this day, which is, then it takes out all of that free agency component of being able to find someone and experience the butterflies, and that's fun too.
Well, but I think there's a happy medium there. It's the same as driving a car. It's like you get excited, you want to drive a car, you're responsible enough to be able to operate a motor vehicle. Okay, you need to take this driver's ed course. Yeah. Once you pass that, you'll get your learners. You can start dating, and then you should have to do some form of testing or some form of acknowledgement that you understand the consequences, because when you're that age, it's like it comes in 1 year and out the other when it's coming. I can't tell you how many parents that I was coaching their son and daughter, and they're like, can you talk to them about this specific thing? Because I had a different ear from them. It was more of a big brother, older friend type of vibe than it was my parent coming down on me. And when I was talking to those kids, they knew it was about getting them the best life that they can get, whether we were talking school, ball, girls, whatever I was telling them was because I actually was giving them my experience and saying, this is what I did. These are things that have happened to me. And just getting people thinking. And I think that is another reason why we made MenzLeague. It's this is exactly it. We're brought up, we're not taught 100%. I should have spent at least a year of my life in school talking about finances. What are you doing with your excess money? How are you going to budget? And yes, did we go through an accounting course one time all the way through? Sure. But that's something that you're going to do every day. Every day. Yeah. But so it's just I find it very interesting. So MenzLeague is about bringing a lot of these thoughts to you as early as we can, saying, hey, here's the one-on-one on finances. If you want to talk to someone for free, come talk to someone. Let's just get you thinking about what you're going to be doing when you get that first job. Let's get you set up to be successful. By the time you're 35 and you're my age, you're not thinking, wow, you just spent 10 to 12 years working, and what do I really, really, really have to show for it?
Yeah, if anything.
If anything.
And especially post-COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Might as well have. And just thinking about what you said just there, if you need to bring this message to people when they're young, are you going to be able to identify, that teen men group and say, hey, there's some value here.
I mean, when Derek and I came up with the concept of MenzLeague, there's always been an overarching idea that we needed two other components to that. One being women, and then one being the youth. So we're in stage MenzLeague right now, and we're going to get this thing humming and roaring the right way and start building that community. And then I think we'll have to identify the right ladies to take women's league and do the same thing on that side. And then together we can then work for youth league. Yeah. And get all three leagues working together. Because if we can get all three of those components all trying to become 1% better, man, that's what it's about.
Yeah. And you've been in sports a long time. So it's interesting. And I've seen, I've worked with a lot of, mostly it's been basketball, but then other things as well. And it's interesting as I see young men come up through basketball and some of the really positive effects that being part of something can have. And you've probably seen that. Maybe speak on that. It's just the effects that it's had.
The most rewarding, honestly, when you're a player, you think that's everything. And then being a coach, watching the guys when you have them from when they're 14 to when you watch them leave when they're 18 and seeing what they go on to do and having them call you when they're in their low 20s saying, hey, can you be my job reference? Like, can you give me advice on what I should take or where I should go? Yeah. That has been or guys coming up to you being like, man, you like changed my life. Like see him out of like a lounge and then being like, come up to you and being like, thank you. Like that is invaluable. Yeah. I think that's, you don't know it when you get into coaching. And then after you've coached for a long time and you see multiple level of years of guys come back and say the same thing to you, it's similar to when we made that Man Talk Monday initiative and guys came back and said, thank you for giving us the space to be able to share. Right. There really is nothing better than that. Yeah. And I listened to a lot of podcasts. I don't even remember who it was because I've seen like 6 of them that said the same thing. Like all successful businesses or people figured out what their passion was and how they could serve. If you can figure out how to serve, you're going to be successful. Like that's, you're serving a need for people. And so it really comes down to service.
And versus just taking. I'm just going to take out of this and not put back in.
Yeah. Like the go-giver as opposed to the go-getter. Right. Right. That book it's a really good book.
Who wrote that book?
I don't remember the name of the author. My partner actually gave me that book. Okay. But it's after I sent him a couple of podcasts, we've been saying the same thing. It's all about service and giving. Most of the successful, like Bill Gates, all these guys, they found something that was serving people in a specific way, and then they focused on that, and the rest is history.
Yeah, one of the interesting messages, I don't know if you'd know Doug Vermeer, and he was on one of the earlier episodes here, and he was talking about how networks are important, and he believes that they're super critical, and they add, they have like a value almost. But then, like as you go into business, you're creating environments of success that other people can operate in. It's a kind of a cool message that he brings out, which I really liked. So
no, 100%. 100%. I think like people say luck. I don't believe in luck. I believe you create a network that might present you opportunities. Yeah. And that's why I think valuing people, respecting people is so important. Like every person I meet, I'm just actually intrigued to learn their story. Like, how did you start this podcast? Like I'm already have questions in the back of my mind I wish I could ask you, right? Like to get to the point where you are right now, recording this podcast, all this amazing equipment in this specific spot. Like what makes you tick and why did you make this show? Like that to me is fascinating about people. So I try and
that's like another podcast episode. 100%. I'll be on your podcast. You can ask me the question.
For sure. We will have to do that.
I got to tell you, because it just pops into my mind about, as you talk about sports and respect, especially. And when I got schooled, man, like we had our kids, I was a little older when we had our kids. And so I thought I was, pretty smart. And then we go to, my son starts playing basketball and I'm going to be, I don't know what gene is broken, but I'm going to be the loud, grouchy parent in the stands, man. So my son's playing and the freaking, like the poor kid's like probably, I don't know, he's probably 10 and I'm like, bat, 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 the whole time. And I thought, well, this is great. Like what a adrenaline rush and stuff. And then what I didn't realize in basketball, if you're any good at all, is that you're not just going to play on one team. You're probably going to play in different teams and it's going to mix and match. And so, here I am like beaking off to other parents and refs and stuff. And then it was a few months later and he switches teams and it's like, oh, hey, Daryl, we're on the same team now. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
now all the parents are friends. And it's like, oh, lesson learned, don't beak off because you're probably going to, and I've been thrown out of games because it's like too loud. And it's like, man, I got to reel it in hard. But yeah, it's funny because I really got a real lesson on kind of like being more respectful in those environments, because I thought it was just part of the game. I had reffed for years, and I knew the impact that loud parents had. They can impact a game.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And so I thought, I'm going to be that parent. It was
Yeah.
a huge mistake.
Well,
Big mistake.
It's funny that you bring that up, because that's like one of my favorite things to talk about. But it all comes down to, again, is perspective, right? Like I've had parents tell me that you're not playing my son enough. I've had parents tell me like all kinds of things, like losing them, getting super angry. And it's interesting. You bring up referees. Like if you look at a coach, a referee, and a parent, all three have a completely different perspective.
Oh, yeah.
Like a referee, I've reffed before, hardest job on the planet. Like how many calls could go one way, another way? You could call this one, you could not call that one. And if you have something emotionally invested in that, very easy as a parent to say, well, what about that? What about that? And that's something that's very hard to get across to your players. I think you getting across to your players, let me talk to the refs. You don't worry about it. Sometimes we're going to get jobbed by the refs. Sometimes it just happens that way.
Yeah.
But you saying a word or getting upset or getting angry is probably only going to make it worse. Because I've been a referee, and the person that's beaking you don't feel like you want to give them anything else.
Nothing special.
And then from a coaching perspective, which is an interesting dynamic with the parent, is you're building a relationship with the parent over a year, 2, 3 years if you have the same kids. And I mean, depending on what level of ball you've played, let's use basketball as a perspective. Like I've obviously played, most of the parents that I talked to, I played at a higher level of basketball. And the most interesting conversation to me was always playing time. If you're on a competitive team, like when I grew up, we had one club team. You either made it or you didn't.
Yeah.
And there was no discussion about playing time, because the university coaches that were there obviously practiced with us. They made the decisions. They knew who they wanted to start for whatever reason made sense to them. And transitioning myself into coaching is the same thing. I mean, you have practice, certain players build up a certain amount of trust with you, because you know they can run your stuff. They hit more shots more accurately, and my favorite parents are the ones that would come up to me after the season or during the season and be like, what can I help my son do to get him to a spot where he would be starting for you, or he'd be playing more minutes? Like, what is it that he needs to do? And ask me that question, as opposed to saying, why is he not playing more?
Right.
And that's all a perspective thing, because the way that I look at it is, I'm saying, are you insinuating that I just prefer that kid's haircut, so I'm playing him more than your kid? Or
we're trying to win.
Yeah, well, and that, like, realistically, if you're going to play a competitive system, I'm going to try and maximize the team to win the game. If your son isn't playing more than another kid, then that's a different conversation, and we can have that conversation. And I love that. And I've seen kids take that feedback and go on to be starters and go on to go play university. Like I've seen the kid who didn't start take the criticism, do the work, and make it there.
Yeah, and there's even examples in the NBA of that. You know,
all over the place.
Not drafted way low, and then suddenly they're starting, or they just got a lot of bench time, and suddenly they're starting. So
yeah, I mean, sports comes down to opportunity and work. That's, in my opinion, it's opportunity and work.
It's kind of life.
Yeah, well, and that's why I love sports so much, because it transitions into life.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I can't tell you how many kids I've coached that'll say, well, and it's changed. Like the generations I think they're more brainwashed now, because they think they're going to the NBA.
Right.
And I'm like, you don't realize how hard it is to make the NBA.
Yeah.
Like, if you really want to make the NBA, you shouldn't even be talking to me right now. You should be literally shooting. You shouldn't be playing Fortnite. Yeah. You shouldn't be out at those parties. You should be running hills. You should be, because I'll tell you what, there's a kid right now who's 14 who has nothing. He has nothing but a basketball, and he's living in a one-bedroom condo with 5 siblings, and his only out is to make the NBA. So are you hungrier than that guy?
Yeah.
Because that's the difference. You're in a comfortable situation. Most people are relatively comfortable in Canada. You are not, A, you don't have the competition level here, and B, you don't have the hunger here.
Yeah.
So if you want to raise both of those, you're going to have to get on the best team in Canada. You're going to have to travel and go play those competitive teams, and you're going to have to spend almost every waking moment eating, breathing, and living basketball. Yeah. And I think that's the difference we just don't understand the mindset. And that was always my message to my guys. I'm like, you want to play post-secondary? What you just did, winning by 30 points against this team that was less than you, is not acceptable. Yeah. We should have won this game by 55, and we should have dictated everywhere we wanted the ball, wherever we wanted to score at any given time. Because that's how much better you are talent level than the kids you just played.
Yeah.
So what do you want? Is this what you want, to beat a team by 40 and we're just going to go on and play maybe post-secondary? Or do you want to go play in the States? Do you want to go play pro somewhere, not necessarily the NBA? Because if that's what you want, I'll coach you to that standard.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting as well. And, you know, the concept of athlete is, you know, I think it gets lost sometimes because they, you know, when people say, what do you do for fun? Oh, well, I play basketball. But they don't really see themselves as an athlete. And, you know, like when I was, you know, anytime you talk to any like hockey player or, you know, basketball player at any significant level, it's like, okay, well, I got to run hills. I got to do stairs. I got to do weights. I got to do cardio. Then I got to put in my hours of shooting. I got to do dribbling. I got to do, and then you got to do eating and you got to do doctors. And like being an athlete's, it's encompassing, you know, it's like, and if you want to get to the higher levels, you can't, like you said, you can't just sit around playing video games. It doesn't, like, what could you be doing otherwise? Like, you think, if you're going to play 3 hours of video games, did you go to the gym? Did you push yourself in the gym? Did you run today? What did you cook for food? Are you eating breakfast cereal instead of real meals? Like, you know, it's tough. Being an athlete's
it's a full-time
serious
job.
Thing. Yeah.
And like, it's like you can't, we're behind. That's, I think, the misconception. Like in hockey, we're fine. We're at that echelon. If you're doing everything here in hockey and you're at the highest level, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
We're behind in basketball. You can't do exactly what the kid in LA is doing at 14. You have to do more because he's getting better competition.
Right.
You know, it's more important to them as a country, the sport.
Yeah.
So you can't just because you're shooting the same amount as the highest ranked profile kid in Montana doesn't mean you're on the same level as the high profile. You need to be shooting more than that kid. You can't miss as many shots as he misses.
Yeah. Well, you know, the interesting, sorry to interrupt, but
no, please.
We went to a conference, or not a conference, but a tournament in Vegas one time. And, you know, we come from Calgary, and these were good kids that, you know, so they kind of played together against each other, you know, different teams. And so they were kind of dialed in. But by July, I think they had probably, as a team, played about a dozen games, right? So we get in there, and we go to play with a team that was, I was sitting in a spectator's chair.
So everyone's part of the team. Everyone's part of the team.
So we were playing this team from somewhere in the States, right? And I was talking to the coaches, and they had already played 57 games together.
Oh, yeah.
And these kids were not taller, but they were faster. They dribbled better. They shot better. Like, everything about their play, way, way better. It was shocking. And so they beat us. And, you know, they weren't, like, if you had to bet on the team, you wouldn't have bet on that team because they were smaller, right? That's kind of basketball. You know, we've kind of moved to the bigger team, but that was a shocking revelation.
Yeah, you know, I had so many shocking revelations growing up for me that made me realize, and I think we're sheltered a little bit more today, but I remember in high school, we played a team in Edmonton in a Jasper Place tournament. They were the #1 ranked team in New York, and they were coming just for like a preseason warm up, and they beat us by 75 points. And they, we were down 50 something at half. Wow. Like I stood at half court for the tip. It was a kid who was in grade 8 playing up, and he was 2 inches taller than me. And he won the tip, and I didn't move from the center until it was 12-0. Like, our guards couldn't even get the ball over the foul line. Holy and I remember being like, wow, like, okay, I'm not really an athlete anymore. Yeah. And then another time, like, I think it's just crazy. Like, there's so many opportunities where I remember, like, when I was the kid's age that I'm coaching, there was only one club team. So we had the best players. So you wouldn't see CYDC, Genesis, CBA, you know, so none of that. It was one team, and it was the junior dinos for our age group. And so all the best players played on one team, and we didn't play against other kids our age. There was no other clubs to play against. So we played in MenzLeague against men, and we would go to tournaments to get exposure to United States teams, and we did well against some. But I remember specifically went to a camp once in Montana State. And we played this team from Montana, and it wasn't even the best kids from that city. It was like one high school there, and they had 2 amazing players. And you had all the best players from Calgary, and we lost by like 4. And I remember thinking, if they put the best kids on from this city here, they would absolutely destroy us. And so we got that dynamic. Whereas now kids, there's so many clubs, which is cool because the sport's growing, but there's so many clubs that they play against each other in this bubble in Calgary. And that's where I brought up that 40-point thing is you might have a really good team and you're winning by 40, and it gives the kids this false sense of how good you are.
Right.
Yeah. And that was always the hardest thing as a coach for me, was to have a strong team and to try and break them down mentally to realize what we're doing here is not the goal.
Yeah, that's right. It is interesting, you know, like in our society, the way it's a little bit evolving is competition's not good. You don't want to compete with people because someone's going to feel bad and then someone's going to win. And it's a complicated spot to be in. And I guess my argument's always been like, you know, how do you know how good you are, or like how far you've pushed yourself if you never compete with someone who's better than you? And, you know, and like I remember when I was a kid, I was in track a lot. And, you know, I did very, very well in Alberta. And then we took a road trip. It was like one of my first road trips when we were in Ontario. I got spanked. It was embarrassing. And I came back and it's like, wow, I am clearly not working hard enough, you know? Actually, you know what's this came to mind, and you might have some connection with this. I used to cycle quite competitively, and I started, you know, I would ride to work. I would ride a lot. I put a ton of miles on. And I always, you know, I'd have a heart rate monitor on, and I'd be watching my heart rate, and I'd be like, oh, man, this is tough. You know, I'd be going, and I don't want to go too much harder than this. And then I went and I started getting VO2 max testing at SAIT. They have a lab there. And then they tell you where you should be training. And I was like, oh, man. It's so, you know, and it goes back to that whole thing of like, it was just my brain telling me that this hurts. And I didn't realize my body could do so much more. And, you know, and it's that in some ways that, like you said, really translates into business too. It's like,
life.
You can put more into it. Yeah,
life.
You can put more in.
Yeah, it's crazy you say that. And that was one of the most frustrating things as a coach is like, we'd set up a drill for the kids. We used to call it 40 and 4, where you like run around, take shots, do layups, you count it out loud. And the first time they would always do it worse. Then I'd make them run, and then they'd do better. And I'd always say, why is it that I have to make you run for you guys to actually put some mental thought into this and like concentrate? And like, you technically should not be able to do it better the second time after running than you did it the first time. It makes no sense. You had more energy the first time. What you did is you just said, I'm not going to give it 100% because I don't have to.
Right. Yeah.
And that's another one of the hardest things, teaching Canadian kids, bringing them down to the States. Like, I spent my whole days coaching, trying to get my guys mentally ready for when we play someone that really knows what they're doing. Someone's going to come after us and get in our shorts. That was like 80% of my focus.
Right.
So hard to do when the perspective and the environment is not there on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. It was interesting too, whenever we took kids to the States, one of the things that we saw like really right away was that Canadian teams play off of each other by about 6 feet.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Whereas American teams, right there.
Come and get it.
Right there. Like
100%.
You can't shoot, you can't dribble, you can't pass. Like, you're just done.
Because if someone plays that close to you in basketball, the problem is you try and teach a system, right?
Yeah.
So, and the system requires the ball to move and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And when someone gets in your shorts, you need to be able to create a level of respect as a basketball player so that they can't be on you like that.
Right.
Like, if you do that to anyone in the NBA, they're just going to go by you. Like, you can't be that close to somebody. But sometimes athletically we're not there, and sometimes just mentally we're not there.
You're certainly not used to it, which makes it like, whoa, what's happening right now? And you can't fix that over the course of a tournament. It takes months.
And you have to have confidence in yourself as an entire player. Like, some kids don't like dribbling, but by someone getting that close to you, it forces you to be able to go by him and dribble and punish him for being that close. And that's the hard part to teach.
Yeah. I think sometimes, and maybe this is a connection to the business world as well, is I think, you know, in basketball, I even think of the youngest age groups, and part of it is we try to make it fun for them, right? Like, you don't want to just bring a bunch of kids in and say, okay, today we're dribbling for 3 hours, and today you're going to use your right hand, tomorrow you're using your left hand, and it would be terrible, and they'd all quit. So you throw them into scrimmages right away because it's kind of fun. But the reality is that you don't really get good until you break down skills. Like, you have to say, okay, look, and that's why, the combines, you're measuring very specific things, right? And so, okay, I'm going to do bench press, then I'm going to sprint. And so, and even in basketball, like the one hand drill where you're just shooting over and over, one hand, no support, no backboard, right through the hoop, right? And that kind of translates into business, because I think sometimes we throw people into business roles and we just say, okay, here's your desk, here's your job, have fun.
Yeah.
Like, you figure it out, right? But it's like, even in any job, like, like, imagine if we, went to, a Formula One race, and you and I just got thrown into the pits, and it's like, yeah, that car's going to come in, you got to do some service work on it. And it's like,
yeah,
we're going to be there for hours. But so you got one guy, and his entire job is holding a torque wrench and ramming it onto a bolt and then pulling it back. It's his whole job.
Yeah.
And his whole job lasts 3 seconds.
But if he messes it up.
Yeah. And he messes it up, and then they lose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's crazy. And sometimes I think work's a little bit like that, and we don't really approach it that way. We don't approach it from an individual things that we can do in our job, because we just say, this is my job, and it's this big, hairy thing we try to approach.
Well, I mean, if you think about, and that, I guess it comes down to like, how good is your training program, right? Because when you go to school, even if it's engineering, you get out, the concepts of engineering, but you go to an engineering firm and they do things a certain way. You have to learn to do it the way they do it, and that becomes your new standard for how engineering is done. Mm-hmm. But they don't teach you specifically how you're going to do that job in school. They just give you the theory behind it. So if your training program is dog shit, your employees are going to be dog shit for a while. Yeah.
I think I've kind of gotten beat on that message a few times. I need to do some better training with staff, and
it's hard though. It's hard.
Yeah. And the tough part about, when you're in business and if you're in a supervisory management role, like, there's parts of it you love and parts of it you don't love. And there's parts that I don't enjoy about our business, and I don't train those well at all. Like, I just kind of skip it a bit.
Yep.
So
that's the human characteristic though, right? That your truth is what you have experienced and what you've learned. And it's hard to step outside that and think of all the little nuances, and that's why you hope you have a good team around you that helps you build the training program, that can point out things that maybe you didn't see and all that stuff. So it's tough.
Well, it's a good point you make, and it's probably why an NFL team or a CFL team has numerous coaches, right? Because they're each passionate about a thing.
Yep, 100%.
And mostly in basketball, I wasn't a great coach, but I leaned more to the being physical part, and doing running and push-ups and making sure that we could stay in the game long enough to finish it, but not so. I just got lost mentally on I have no idea, these plays are so complicated. I don't get it.
You've got me so deep into this now, but you touched on being like the head of an organization or running it, and I think leadership is another huge thing that exists, that there's not necessarily proper training for that. Like, if you think about a lot of people who are managers, supervisors, did they get training on how to actually communicate effectively with their team and how to maximize, or did they just do the job for 10 or 12 years and then they were up for a promotion and the manager retired and like, well, who are we going to put in that spot?
Last man standing. It's like by default, you're the manager now.
Yeah, because honestly, I think the most important thing for a leader or a manager is to, one, understand stuff, and if you don't, you can ask the different components of your organization about it to learn enough, and two is to maximize your team. Like, that is your job, is to make sure everyone below you is doing the right thing and you're steering the ship in the right direction. And a lot of the time, I think we get managers who need to be in the weeds, who still are the worker bees. I have managers that don't effectively motivate their team. Like, understanding each of your employees, what makes them tick, what gets them excited, are they in the right role? Managing that but taking in the opinions of your peers and then making a decision for the organization, very hard. Yeah. And again, similar to having a kid. You have to do the license school to get a car, but to have a child or to be a leader in an organization, what? Life is the teacher? It's crazy. And those decisions, like those leaders, are going to affect everything of your company. You don't realize it at the time, but every person below that person that you put in a managerial role is going to be affected.
Yeah.
So you might think about how many good people you might lose just because you have the wrong manager in the spot. How many people you stagnate that could have started thriving and helping your organization. And it's not easy by any means. I think it's a very challenging thing to do, be an effective leader. But
I think one of the, and having worked with youth over time, it's been a kind of a fun experience to create opportunities for them to lead. And so that, hopefully builds leadership. And it's, I think a lot of leaders get into leadership roles and they're the boss and everything goes through them. You can't make a move, you can't make a decision without contacting me first. And I think it just undermines any opportunity for anyone that you're working with to ever evolve into a leadership role. And you would do that in basketball too, probably. Like, okay, Doug, run this drill, and then it allows Doug to step up and be the captain of the minute, right?
But I think it comes down to identifying what people want. And again, if it's like, I've had an employee that worked for me once when I was a manager, and she was very vocal that she wanted my job. And I said, okay, let's get you my job. Like, that to me is what you should be doing, is say, okay, I'm going to trust you to run, toss some things off me. Let's collectively agree on it. You execute it. You'll get the praise. And when I move out of this role, I will personally recommend that you take this spot.
Right.
And she wanted it. So she went the extra mile to plan things, to organize things, to make us the best team in Alberta comparatively to our peers. And what happened when I left?
Boom.
Exactly what we talked about. She moved into that role. She moved and progressed with the company. But it's about finding what makes the person tick. Like, if you're trying to push a circle into a square, it's not going to work. But if you find that person, that's the square fitting into the square hole, and they want to go through there, man, empower them. Empower the heck out of them.
Well, you're right. And the reality is, there's not everyone is meant to lead. And so when you find those people that are great leaders and going to jump out in front and, take the first bullet, you got to really foster that. Because those people are really valuable.
And they're just going to make you look better. There's this misconception in management and leadership that if you empower someone below you, you're going to lose your job. But anything they do positive is going to positively affect your team, which makes you look better as well. So it's like, I don't know why we have this backwards way of thinking of, I've seen and obviously I can only speak for my experience and what I've seen, and I've seen managers take the credit of their team or not empower their people or promote the wrong person when that person doesn't even really care to be talking to people. And then you have people busting their butt that they like, and whatever decisions went into that or factors went into making that decision, obviously they probably had their logic for it, but it's very interesting that how loose we make people leaders. Like, it's just like, oh, well, I'm applying for it. I have this many years experience managing a team. I should be a great leader here.
Yeah. Leadership dynamics is a fascinating study, really. There's a lot to it.
Huge.
And you could have you have teams that are, if you build a team that's very focused on a hard task, like we're going to build we're going to assemble blocks and the type of leaders that grow out of that, just that very simple organization of people, it's really fascinating, actually. And that's there's books written on it, actually. So it's really neat. So we, even here and in basketball, I've always tried to kind of get behind people to say, hey, I want you to go and do the thing that I could have done. I want you to stand up and do it because you could do it too. Yeah. And it really pays off, I think. So.
Yeah. And again, I keep bringing it back to MenzLeague. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Here's experiences from millions of guys who are sharing their story. Let's learn from them. Let's not wait to lose 3 or 4 people that are close to us before we decide, hey, what are we doing with our lives? Let's not waste a second. Let's try and be 1% better. Let's try and get our physical health better. Let's try and get our relationships better. Let's try and be more financially savvy. Let's help our mental health. It's so natural for us to go to the gym and get a trainer for our bodies. But if you say, hey, man, maybe you should go talk to someone, everyone's like, whoa, bro, I don't need to talk to anybody, okay? Like, I'm all right. It's crazy.
It is kind of funny. And 20 years ago, there wasn't, you didn't have trainers. There wasn't personal trainers. There was more of you'd have a coach, but the coach would be because you're part of a team. So a coach or these trainers that have showed up, and I can only speak so far about this because I kind of have that on the wall. Yeah. But, the reality is that this is it's a new thing, and in some ways, do you need it or not need it? There's some value in it too, right? But because it kind of helps you, with little things. Maybe it helps you keep motivated. But that would be a good thing in business too, right? Like if you had, maybe we should start that up. Personal trainers for
your mental
employees,
for leadership.
Wellness.
Well, I'm just saying, like one's normalized, the others are not.
Yeah.
Why is that? I mean, we should we not be checking in our mental health on a regular basis?
There is in the, it's not the same as what you're talking about, but there is a kind of this group of business coaches, and most of them, I don't know, most of them kind of follow a process or a pattern, which is, I don't know if it necessarily gets into the weeds enough with people. And so it's more like, okay, what do you want to do next? Okay, what are the steps to doing that? Okay, implement those steps and we'll get back together in a week. And it's not what's your problem? Like, what's going on in your head?
Well, and that's what I mean, like, is that I'm talking like sit down with a psychologist.
Yeah.
Like a lot of us, obviously there's financial restraints around that as well. But a lot of us, a lot of people, like, and I'll speak specifically about Calgary, have benefits at these oil and gas companies. And I don't think they're using that service to, like, even if it's twice a year.
Yeah.
Like, and we don't understand what's happening below the surface of the water. Like, it might look calm on the surface, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And having that opportunity to be able to bounce ideas and just let something out that you think is stupid, and having someone acknowledge that it's not, and whatever it is that the psychologists do, I just think it should be more normalized. And it really, and that's another thing that we're trying to do, is just celebrate men specifically being able to share and talk and not be ridiculed or looked at as soft or weak for doing so.
Yeah. I think it's, there's people have talked about this in the past too, where they say, there's a bit of a stigma attached to seeing a psychologist in our community here in Canada. But you go down to, where there's lots of actors and, people that are, in the creative arts, really, it's a much more normalized situation. And so, you would say, hey, what are you up to this afternoon? Oh, I got to go see my psychologist. And if it was here in Calgary, you'd be like, whoa, are you like a killer or something? Or you want to kind of list, or, do I have to be nervous about this? But yeah, like it's way more normal in the States and in other parts of the world. It's just not normal here.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like talking to people, that they're trained to do it, and they're so good most of the time, and they really uncover some of the weird stuff that's in the back of our heads that's probably causing some trouble.
Yeah, I mean, like, who knows? There might be a story that you've been sitting on since you were 6, and it might be affecting your relationship with girls or your boyfriend, whatever. Like, we have no idea what's affecting us. Like, obviously through our journey in MenzLeague, we've had the opportunity to sit down with a lot of psychologists, and not that they were giving us a full session, but like they would ask specific questions that, it's completely, even me not even going for a full session with them has kind of changed my perspective on how I'm looking at things and understanding why I do certain things. And it's just most issues that we have, we portray out, and usually it has something to do with us. Yeah. And it's really cool to be able to be in that space and to see that and to start reflecting on it.
Yeah. And you've probably seen this as well, but this is the kind of the plug out to psychologists, and like, they ask a ton of questions. They usually aren't judging you. They're supportive. They're kind. They're not agenda driven. They're not trying to fix you necessarily. And they care.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's a really it's a valuable service. You're right, and people don't use it. I can't and honestly, no one would tell you if they used it because
they might be embarrassed, or they might just not want you to know. And we're getting there. I think the world is moving into such a more open place. But like I said at the beginning of the show, I mean, these things take so much time, like so much time.
Yeah, it's funny. Maybe the problem is the question that's immediately in our head. If someone says, "Oh, I was off to see a psychologist," the immediate question we have is why.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
But why aren't we saying why not? Like, why aren't you? Like, when's your next psychologist visit planned? Like, you have one booked. It's like, because it means we're not strong. It means we're not powerful in some way. It's unfortunate that we think that.
And I think that is why we put the virtual mental health check-ins within our membership, because it's a step before going to see a psychologist. It's not a psychologist you're talking to, but it is like a professional who deals with listening and handling situations like that. And you can book as many as you want, as long as you're a member. 45-minute appointments online, boom, boom, boom. And you can kind of get your feet wet to being able to share some of those things and see if it helps you. Like, I can't tell you how much better it feels. Like when I did my first Man Talk Monday, I didn't want to do it at all. And it took a while, and I just did it. Yeah, I know. So I did it, and then I had to twist my partner's arm for him to do it. But then the momentum started going, guys started doing it, and immediately after saying it, even though you're not even talking to anyone, just saying something in the camera, talking about something you've gone through that people wouldn't have assumed, just the amount of outpour of people supporting you, or just men saying, you know, thanks for doing that. Like, I have one I could share too. Like, it's been very enlightening, I guess is the word I would use.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, and you're probably right. I think, you know, the women I know seem to be much more comfortable in sharing those sort of, that pain, really, or the struggles they have, whereas we're too tough. We're just going to arm wrestle it out, you know, sort this out.
Well, I think there's a level of empathy that I think, and again, I hate generalizing, but I would say generally a group of women are going to be more empathetic to another woman who's suffering. But they're also, I mean, women have their own definite dynamics that are challenging as well. Like, they might be more empathetic, but, you know, they also get the extreme on both sides. Yeah. So I think men, it's never really been celebrated to do that. I had this one example, a girl at my work, she came to me, she said, "Can I talk to you?" I said, "Okay, yeah, sure. What's going on?" And she said, "Okay, like, I have this lady, she's a black lady, and she was outside of Calgary, and she went shopping, and she was with her little son, he was 5, and she bumped into this older white couple, and the man started like losing his mind on this black lady in front of her son, and just like berating her and telling her this and this, said something about her being black, whatever. So there's obviously some racial tension there as well. But this lady goes home, and she's upset, obviously, and she calls her good girlfriends, and they all banded together. They're all going over to her house that night with bottles of wine. They're going to talk it out. But she said, "What should I say? Like, I don't know what to say." And I said, "Listen, you being there is everything. There's nothing magical you can say. It's just you being there, listening and supporting her is awesome. So just do that." But then I thought about it as I was creating MenzLeague. I'm like, if this had happened the other way around, like if I had a guy friend and it went to he would have either gone to fight with the guy like there.
We're going to find that guy. What's his name? What do you look like? Let's get a composite sketch. Where are you going? Yeah,
but the guys aren't going to come around in a circle and say, you know, tell us how you were feeling and let's have some beers. Like we just don't do that. Like we'd either be like, let's go find him and let's beat him up, or you would have fought him on the spot and you would either you know what I mean? Like, it's just a completely different.
Did you see the Tucker Carlson video from, it was like yesterday?
No.
And he got so Tucker Carlson from Fox News, so he's a pretty in your face kind of guy, and he, you know, agree with him. No one's going to agree 100%. But anyways, that's a disclaimer. So he's at a fishing shop yesterday in Montana, and this big white guy, so Tucker's white, this guy's white, so there's no kind of racial thing going on, but comes right up to him and says, "You are the worst guy in the whole planet. You're just killing people." And it's like, and so I don't know who set it up, but someone's videotaping with their camera, and Tucker's just like, you know, he just kind of says a couple things, nothing serious, but it doesn't disagree with them. Yeah. Just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. Just kind of walks away, kind of laughs at him, actually, which is kind of interesting. So,
yeah, no, it is very interesting. Yeah. Like, I just think, and who knows, like that interaction for that guy might have some like rooted issue that'll like stick around forever, but he's not going to talk to his friends about it. Like, I could list so many examples of that, like that we've talked about through this journey, is just guys holding something in and it coming out at the last second. You'd be like, dude, you've been sitting on this for what, like 6 months? Yeah. A year? You haven't mentioned this one time? Like,
you know, it's something interesting you said too about, you know, very early on, you were talking about, you know, people pass away, and then what did we not say to those people, or what did we, you know, and I've lost a few people over the last couple of years as well. And, you know, one thing that was really fascinating with the one guy that when he passed was the number of phone calls I got right away. It was like, "Did you hear about this? And when was the last time you talked to him? Like, what, you know, how was your relationship with him?" And it was interesting. It was like there was a certain amount of guilt attached to, you know, man, I should have probably taken that call, or should have gone out for lunch, or I should have done something for him. It was really interesting, and it was very, very like surface level. experience that people are having that they hadn't done something and been more involved. That was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I always call like these moments in life, I call them like life moments or game-changing moments. And it happens at death, birth, celebrations, like weddings, divorce, any of those big altering things. There's always a level of guilt, learning, and regret attached to those. And, that was the driving force for MenzLeague is, man, like, I do not want my parents leaving this planet without me telling them all the stuff that I appreciate that they've done for me. Yeah. Like, I don't want my best friends to not hear from me for a while and not know how much I care about them. I don't want to meet the girl of my dreams and not tell her repeatedly how much I'm in love with her. Like, these things we take so easily for granted because they're there. And until it's pulled away from you and you realize, wow, the last time I talked to this dude, that was the last time. Yeah. Or the last text where I didn't put in that little bit of effort because I was busy doing something else. That's it. The last time you went to a family event and the uncle was there and now he's not, and he's never going to be there. He's never going to get to say that last word. It's very powerful. And if you could put that in a bottle and sell it, you'd be an absolute billionaire. Because we chase this our whole lives. We chase that energy level that kids have. We chase that bliss on the marriage day. We chase the bliss of birth and that love that's in that room. That's what we're chasing as human beings all the time.
Yeah. It's interesting that I think the one thing that gets in the way is our own self-interest. And like if I don't call my friends, it's because I'm busy doing me.
Oh, yeah.
And I need to sometimes turn that off and look elsewhere. So.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. I had I blew it. So here's me apologizing to my friend. He moved. I had every opportunity to say goodbye to him, but we were just kind of rushing off because we had this other thing to do, and I should have stopped. And now I'm going to have to drive down to where he moved to, and dang.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Didn't die. Yeah, super guilty.
But I think that right there is the switch. We operate as they're not dead.
Yeah.
That is the switch right there. And it's like, yeah, they're not dead now, but we have no idea what life's going to be. The most healthy person could die tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. Like life is so finite. And it is time is the most precious thing, and how you allocate that and your energy. And that's why for me, it's like, I want to be better. Yeah. 1%. Doesn't matter if I move the dial just a slight millimeter turn. I want to be better today and then tomorrow and the day. I want to, as we do as athletes, when you're 8 and then you're 12, you're a better athlete when you're 12. Yeah. Then all of a sudden we just start regressing as you get into your late 20s. It's like, okay, you're not getting better anymore. You're getting worse. Yeah. But everything else in life, I can control. You can be in the best shape of your life. You might not be doing the same basketball stuff, but you can be in better shape. You can be better with your money. You can be better with your relationships. Yeah. So do
you know the concept of progressive overload in training? So the idea is that so if I want to, very easy concept to grasp if you're talking about, say, a professional power lifter. Okay. So maybe I can deadlift 400 pounds and I need to get to 500 pounds. Okay. So I need to just essentially set up a realistic chart. It's like goal setting. So you set goals and you say, I need to hit this point, I need to hit this point, I need to hit this point. And then there's, part of the real science of it is that you don't always go flat out. Sometimes you have to back off, then you step up. But it's interesting in life that, if you're going to be at 1% better, then you need to measure that, and you need to say, okay, 1% takes me to here, and then the next one goes here, and then goes here. And I think so many people are just just floating, and there's no measurement. There's no, what does 1% mean?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe you're 1% better because you came here today.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or we need to write it down and say, this is what 1% is.
Yeah. And I think that's a challenge, especially with our business. And I think the 1% better is more a mindset than it is a tracking service. Yeah. So whether or not you actually did become better that day is irrelevant. The point is your intention is to become better. Yeah. It's to be open to learn. It's to say, I don't know everything.
Yeah, well, it's recognizing your shortcomings, right? And if you don't recognize them, it's like...
Yeah, but you're right. It's very challenging. That was one of our biggest challenges when we made MenzLeague is how can we actually help guys become better? And it's like without being able to really track it, it is hard to do. It is hard to do. But we just figured if we get to give them the tools, give them information, give them tips and tricks, the things that we've learned through professionals and whatnot in our experiences along the way, hopefully more guys come and share more experiences. And the more people that share stories, because that's how we learn really, is experience and stories. And from people we trust telling us what they did and whatnot. Like when I was teaching those kids, I was giving them a piece of me so that they can take it into their lives and grow. So that's really what MenzLeague is us taking pieces of a collective group of men that have the intention to become better and saying, hey, if this is something that resonates with you, here's a blueprint of what this guy did. Here's a blueprint of what this guy did. Here's what happened when they didn't do this. They didn't do that.
Yeah. I think sometimes the challenge with, when you're talking about just kind of these psychological challenges is that we don't know that something is about us isn't good enough yet. And sometimes we just kind of, me talking to you, maybe I'm going to try to get you to agree with me that the thing that I probably should change is good enough. And so what's probably quite valuable in these environments is this sort of cathartic environment where we can say, you know what, this has always been a bit of a challenge for me. And then someone's going to say, whoa, I didn't even realize that was a challenge. Yeah. Maybe that's the whole problem. I didn't know what my problems were in the first place. And so you can't get better unless you have something to be better on, unless you're just trying to, feel better about your challenges. That doesn't make sense. You want to get better.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's again, the whole concept is that like what you deem to be insignificant might be actually affecting you a lot worse below the surface, and sharing it and seeing other guys also share it is kind of like being like, oh, okay, that is something that we can talk about. It's not something I just have to pretend like it's not an issue just because I'm a guy, I'm trying to man up and be tough. This can be something that I'm able to admit, right?
By acknowledging, and like you actually have to put your finger on it and say, hey, I can fix that.
Exactly.
I could be better there.
Exactly.
Yeah. What you were talking earlier about basketball, I'm kind of curious. You were talking about NBA stuff. Like, and I think there's a certain level of unrealisticness about saying, look, anyone can be in the NBA. That's not possible.
Yeah.
But, like, if you want to get to these higher level of sports, let's say, and we can apply it to business, but what do you have to do that? Like, what's the magic sauce or the secret sauce?
To make the NBA type of thing?
Yeah, like to get to these, like the highest level of your potential really is more of what I'm talking about. Because like, if you and I played basketball, of course I'm going to beat you.
Yeah,
but
I don't know about that, but I like that.
Like you're going to play better than I do, but am I at my highest level of potential, right? So like, what do young people need to do to move themselves up through this potential scheme, so that they don't underutilize it and then end up at my age thinking I could have done that.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to channel I'm going to call him a mentor, but I've never met him. But one of my idols is the late Kobe Bryant, because he talks about this a lot in extent about being in your lane and being the best in your lane. And what I mean by that, and again, I think I touched on it earlier, I think the world should be built on passion. You need to find what makes you passionate. What is getting up and not work for you? And I think that is the only way you're going to reach the pinnacle of what you're supposed to be doing, is if you find that. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for the youth today is we throw them into school and we say, what are you taking? Engineering, business. And I used to ask my kids this all the time. Okay, that's cool. What do you want to do? Well, I'm taking my business degree. Yeah, but what do you want to do with the business degree? What do you want to do with the communications degree? No one knows their why. And I think that is the problem right now that we're all facing. If you know your why, it's not work anymore. That's what Kobe says all the time. He said, when I was waking up at 4 a.m, I would rather be doing nothing else. There's nothing I would rather be doing than running wind sprints, than getting my conditioning in, than lifting, and then going to practice, then leaving, resting, going back to practice again. There's nothing I would rather do. And same with Will Smith with acting. He's like, you are not going to be better. I love this. So I will die on this hill doing this because that's what makes me tick. And I've spent like the better part of the later part of my, I'd say within my 30s, I've really been interested in that because I think my day job is very close to my skill set, what makes me tick. I love people.
Yeah.
I love talking to people. I love questions. I love understanding, which is really helpful in my job. But then this MenzLeague concept came around and I was just like, oh my, like this is what I want to be doing. Like I could talk about this topic all day long. I could learn about this topic all day long. This to me is not work.
Yeah. You can have more than one passion.
Yeah, oh, for sure you
I think some people is like, nah, that's what I do. That's it.
For sure you can. But like if you're an accountant and you don't love numbers, are you really doing what you should be doing? Like so many people are doing a job and there's so many circumstances that force us into these decisions. You know, having a kid is one, you know, life is moving on and we don't want to be chasing that thing that we're passionate about. You know, there's so many reasons why we settle. But if you ask me that question for the MBA, that's my problem with a lot of the kids. They say, I want to make the MBA, but I say, do you actually, like, do you love basketball? Do you love training? Like you talked about some of the kids wouldn't play if they were like, let's work on, then you probably don't really want to be playing basketball. If you don't love learning to dribble with both hands and finishing right, finishing left with contact and learning to go behind your back and doing controlled situations and shooting 4 million shots a day, you don't want to be in the NBA. There's, 350 guys in the NBA at one given time. I saw this awesome video of Bradley Beal from the Washington Wizards talking to an AAU team. I'm not sure why, if it was his AAU team or if it was a friend that got him to talk. And he said to the kids, he said, listen, there's 300 and however many people in the NBA. And there's not one of you here that can guard me. Not a single one of you kids. So next time you think you're going to take someone's spot, that's how he's like, I will destroy each and every single one of you. And you're not taking my spot. That's what he says to these kids. And they're like 16. And I'm like, but you need to hear that.
Yeah.
Right. You need to hear that. If you want the NBA, you better be eating it. And if you're in Calgary, Canada, you better be literally double time eating it. Like double time.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think there's a lot of naysayers in our lives too. And you probably see that where it's like, you know, if you got a kid shooting hoops and it's getting dark out, do you tell him to come in or do you support him to stay out? Like it's a tough, because I think even for me in sports, I've had people in business and people will say, don't do that. It's too risky or it's too hard or, you know, why? Why would you do that? It's
well, because I want to make the NBA.
Yeah.
Like we had a guy on our podcast, Zach Ronaldo, was the second podcast we ever did. And we asked him that question about the NHL. And he said, there was nothing else for me. The blinders is on. He later said, blinders on, buddy. Like I'm in the basement every night. My dad set up a rink and I'm down there every night. I'm announcing myself. I'm coming in. I'm pretending. I'm visualizing the NHL.
That's so good.
There was no other job for me. There's no fireman. There's no architect. I was making the NHL.
Yeah.
Blinders. And I was like, that is the attitude that you need. If you want to be the top 300 of something in the world, you better love that and want it more than anything. So,
you know, it was an interesting, it's kind of like it's not to not make the point, but it was something my brother said some time ago. He was a dentist and, you know, he was a very good dentist and he had a certain level of passion about it. And, you know, he did it and did well and he's out of it now. But what he was passionate about was not dentistry, but it's what he did after. Like it was what he was doing at home. He was passionate about his family and about hiking, and he was a triathlete. And he was an amazing athlete, actually. He still is. And he saw dentistry as a tool to get him to this. And so he had to be good at dentistry because he needed this so badly.
But at least he knew what he needed, right? And that's cool. That's cool.
So it wasn't a struggle for him to do the thing that he made a lot of money at and did well at because it afforded him to do this. And that's, you know, that's kind of the lesson in life a lot too, where you didn't even work. There's a lot of stuff we have to do.
Oh yeah.
We don't love doing it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But we can still be good at it. And, you know, but we're passionate about the stuff we're passionate about. And yeah, it's interesting. I guess I see this theme of lack of passion that kind of coming through a lot of young people now, especially video games. I don't know. They've replaced, I don't know if you know Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, and so he talks a lot about, you know, you have to replace one thing with another. You can't just wholesale quit smoking is one thing he talks about, and just, you know, like you got to have something else you go to. And like, so if kids are playing video games all the time and you want to stop, we got to replace it with probably a passion like basketball or weights or running, or just get out there and do something.
Oh yeah.
Got to replace it.
Oh yeah, for sure. You don't want to live an empty life like that, right? Passion's key.
Yeah. What video games are you playing now?
Do I have to say that on air, man?
Nope. I grew up before video games.
Oh yeah.
I grew up. Yeah, we had the oldest of the old, and I just never got into it. I was too busy with track. I just never. It just wasn't interesting, and it isn't now.
Oh, I grew up on video games, which is probably definitely did not help my basketball career.
Yeah.
But like I said, like I was in the same mindset as those kids. It's very hard you make every team your whole life. You start on every team your whole life. It's very hard to understand what you need to do to be better than someone you haven't even seen on a regular basis. So I never pushed myself to get much better than I was, because I always was at the top until you're in college and you're like, wow, I'm not making the NBAs. And you're like, what the heck happened here?
What was an interesting, this is just a bit of a sideline, is when I was with my son's last team, I was working a little bit with their nutrition and training stuff. And so we started looking at, what are you guys eating, and what do you guys, like, what's your diet program like? Whoa.
Oh yeah, nothing.
What a disaster. It's like, have you guys ever been on this like internet? Like, how do you not know what you're supposed to be eating? Like the amount of bread and cereal that these kids ate, shocking. And protein, non-existent. Like to the point of like, how are you still alive? And if kids understood at a much younger age that like your muscles are built with protein, like, and if you're not eating enough protein, you're not building muscle, you're not replacing muscle as it breaks down. And like, these kids' diets, like in general, this is too much science, but generally you're supposed to be around a gram, give or take. There's a fair margin, but if you use a gram per pound of protein per day, that's a pretty solid number for an athlete. These kids, 0.2 grams.
Wow.
Like, not on the scale. Like, it's like, what are you eating? Well, I have sandwiches with a slice of bologna in it or something. That's their protein intake. And it's like, that's not it, man. That's not going to cut it.
Yeah, and honestly, even we're talking about kids. Let's talk about 28-year-olds.
Yeah, that's
29.
Yeah.
Like this is partially why we have a nutrition course coming out for men. Yeah. Because again, I looked at my life. I'm like, am I even what are we doing here? Like as you get older, it's like almost even more important that as a kid, you don't even think about it, because it's like, okay, whatever, I'm moving, I move fine. Yeah. We're trying to come out with things like a mobility course. Like, I'm an ex-athlete. I can't move properly. Like my arm doesn't move above my head as it should, because I'm just stiff from sitting in office chairs and not practicing every day. And these are the types of things like nutrition and mobility and things that we don't think of, that we really do need to get a better handle on if we want to live a fuller and longer life.
Yeah. And really part of the challenge is there's either a malaise, people don't care at all, right? Or on the other hand, there's so much noise that it's impossible to figure out, like, how would you go online and figure out what you should be eating? Like, there's no, if you YouTube, what should I be eating?
There's a million answers.
Yeah, like, it's pointless. Don't even do the search. It's not worth it. So.
Yeah, and I think that we've had that talk with our finance guy a million times is, well, the reason that is there's just a different opinion on how you do it. There's so many different ways you could do it. There's so many different types of investments you could do, and why would you do one over another? And one expert might think that one's over another. So really it's about finding people you trust and hoping that they're giving you the best information to make the right decisions. So, but more, I think the biggest strength of it is we just need to bring awareness to these things. Like even us talking about this is cool. Even acknowledging that, okay, there's multiple different ways that we could be eating, but at least we're acknowledging that we're probably not doing it right, and we might need to do some adjustments, and it might have to tweak one from one and one from another, but just acknowledging that we might have a problem is like the important thing. Yeah,
and what's neat is, food or even finances is you can actually sit down and say, this is where I am, this is where I'd like to be. What's the path, and then you can tune in that, 1% better will get you to somewhere.
Exactly.
At least you can take some steps. It makes it easy you can actually look at what you need to do.
Exactly.
Just kind of great. So, yeah. Well, listen, we've talked about a ton of stuff, and I think I'm looking kind of excited about being on your podcast now. So
yeah, you should, man. We'll get you on there for sure.
So it'll be fun, but I appreciate your time, and I am going to link up the MenzLeague org and everything else that you've been talking about, and other people that are interesting. We should put that on the link. That would be pretty fun. So
for sure. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah. And how do people, like, here's your plug time. How do people find, is it Men's League?
Yeah, so we got MenzLeague.com, MENZ League. So we put the Z in there to make it a little bit different than just finding your sports men's league that would come up every time. So MenzLeague with the Z.com, that's where you'll find everything about Men's League and what we're doing and all our initiatives, all our partnerships, and then obviously the core pieces that make it up, the membership, the community, the coaching, and the resources. You can check out our podcast, which is the Man Over Matter podcast.
Man Over Matter.
We're on Spotify and all that stuff. And then you can get at us on Instagram, so at Men's League.
Okay.
And you can also email Derek or myself or DM us. Our emails are just Fabian, Fabian, at MenzLeague, MENZ, league.com, or Derek, Derek, sorry, at MenzLeague.com. So that's how you can get at it. Or just go on Instagram and get into our DMs. We're always on that, answering those things.
What's this next big event? Is that scheduled or what's
Not scheduled yet. So we're thinking probably late November, early December. We're going to do an event. Probably going to have it downtown Calgary at a lounge. Probably sell 50 tickets. We'll bring in a speaker. We'll have some nice food. So be looking out for that. That should be coming out. We'll start promoting that hard probably in August, actually. August, September, October.
Cool. We'll be promoting you should just have a bunch of pickup basketball games.
Yeah, the social series is coming. The social series is coming for sure. For sure.
Yeah, now that we can actually
go outside.
Basketball.
Yeah. I'm scared to see how bad I'm going to be. That's the problem.
Yeah. Oh, well. You have to start running.
Yeah.
I heard a cool quote. It's athletes run. It was on a shirt, and it's like, damn, that's good. Athletes run. That was all it was. 2 words. Athletes run.
That one hits deep for me just because my anxiety is completely linked to running.
Yeah.
Like when I grew up running my whole life, never, ever anxious.
Really?
And as soon as I stopped practicing every day and getting that run in, that's when anxiety started to build and build and build and build and build.
Yeah.
And I find that when I do any kind of cardio, the release is I can feel it throughout my whole body. So I like that quote.
Athletes run.
Athletes
run.
On
that, I appreciate your time. Thanks very much for coming.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the show. Look forward to seeing you again. It's going to be great.
No problem, man.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.